It utterly shocks me how many Christians say Jesus is the sinless Messiah, and in the same breath go on to say stuff like this. No, we don't have to keep the Sabbath. Look, Jesus broke Sabbath many times. And herein lies the problem with mainstream Christianity. Where is your biblical basis for saying that Jesus ever broke the Sabbath? One, he can't be sinless and break the Sabbath. The biblical definition of sin in the New Testament, mind you, is the breaking of God's commandments, and of which Sabbath is a really big, really important one that God assigned a death sentence to. So if Jesus was running around breaking the Sabbath, he's not sinless, and he's not the Messiah, because the entire Old Testament prophesied that he would be the plumb line of righteousness, that he would be the obedient one who didn't break God's laws. Satan is the one that breaks God's laws, not Jesus. And guess what one of God's laws is? Sabbath. The problem is you're not reading your Bible at all, and you're taking man-made interpretations as gospel and using it as an excuse to sin. And if you want an excuse to sin, you'll find one easy. Easy. Because God gave you exit ramps so that you can get off his path of righteousness. You can do whatever you want. You can use your free will to break God's commandments. You can profess Jesus with your mouth and dishonor him with your actions by continuing to live in a way that he never told you to live and break commandments that he consistently told you to obey. If you want to do that, go right ahead. But I have serious doubts that Judgment Day is going to go the way you think it's going to go. And I believe that because I actually have read and studied the Bible and understand that God does not change and that God's laws are important and that you cannot willfully sin and think it's okay and that you're going to be just fine because you profess Jesus with your mouth. The demons profess Jesus with their mouth. Are they saved? If you spent any amount of time reading the regulations that God gave for the Sabbath in the beginning of the Bible, Jesus never broke it once. Not once. He only broke man-made commandments surrounding the Sabbath. Ones that they came up with that God never gave in the Torah, in the beginning of the Bible, when he was speaking to Moses. They made up all their own regulations and laws, and they were teaching them as God's laws. And your churches are still doing that today. Maybe it's time to follow the word and what it says instead of the herd and what they say. Because men and religious institutions have a pretty bad track record of actually doing what God said to do in his scriptures. And if you read the front of the Bible, it'll tell you that. Time to wake up and start doing what God asked you to do, not what the church says you should do.